Yeah. Yeah. Uvlalotak. We're going to go and get started. Real quickly first, a couple of other lost and found items. Another glasses case, gray silver. It'll be out at the front desk. And then, Barbara, I found your stuff. So I've got it, we can get it back to you. This morning we're going to have our morning welcome by the Chad Keel group. I'm looking out in the audience to see if they're ready. They're going to welcome us into the day with a song. Lisa, are you here? Lisa Lang. Okay. Maybe they're getting ready to do their entrance. Well, while we're waiting for them, tomorrow morning, or maybe even this afternoon, if you guys all look in the back wall over there, do you see the language map? We're going to use this institute as a way to start gathering some data from across the state, data that we've been trying to capture over the years, and we're going to compare it with some data that we already have. And what we're going to ask you to do is, if you know of an immersion school, a dual language program, or a language nest, there's going to be color-coded pins for you to use back there. I'll get the coding put up. And you're going to put a pin on the map at that location that you know of those three things, and there'll be instructions up there. And then if you also know of a program that's not language-based, but you know it's cultural-based, we're going to capture that as well. But we're also trying to kind of draw a delineation between those two. If they're just culture-based programs, make sure it says culture-based, and then immersion, language nest, and dual language. And then we also are going to have a list. If you want to give us information on a program, I'll get to your question in just a second. If you also have information on a program that has capacity to start or is ready to start, but you know they don't exist yet, you know of some groundswell of effort in a community, then we want you to list that community and a possible contact person as well. And again, this is just for us to begin to start collecting data from all across our state. And Susan, you had a question? Languages, content in schools. That's good to capture that out and pull it into its own category. Thank you. We'll find another color thumbtack for that, but the directions with the specific color thumbtack will be up here. If you don't follow the directions on the thumbtacks, it might get confusing for us, so please ask questions if it sounds confusing when we put it up there. It's on the language map, not just for us to gather data, but we also think it would provide us a good visual when we go back and revisit it after everybody has an opportunity to put pins up there. So is Scott Keel ready? Okay, well, I have another announcement then. Some of the team facilitators contacted us yesterday and arranged for elders to be interviewed in the KUAC sound television room. We have some more empty spots today. So if you're from a language group that did not have an elder interview and one of your elders would love to tell a story and have it captured in our indigenous languages, this is a great opportunity to do that. There is also the opportunity to use this KUAC soundproof booth if you're really passionate about the work of language revitalization and you want to talk about that. You're also invited to the soundproof room over at KUC for that recording. So if you're interested in that, team facilitators, or you know someone on your team you want to tap to do this, we've got some empty spots. There's an email I sent out to you yesterday with the 2 people you need to respond to. And again, just like almost everything else at this institute, you can email Ashley or Leona Long. Leona's contact, team facilitators, is in your name tag. And they'll make an arrangement for someone to escort the person who is going to be interviewed or video captured over to the booth. Yeah, Ashley? 1 minute. Okay. All right. Did you have something? Oh, okay. Go ahead, Yvonne, come on up. At this time, we can start inviting our morning panel members up, our A&L PAC members, and Yvonne will make introductions.
So as we, Chikvan Kunzi. as we, they're ready? Okay, so we will have the Hadkil open us up this morning with the song.
Forgive us if we make a mistake because we had the best evening last night. We were busy till almost 10 o'clock, and since we're together as one, we are feeling so powerful. And one of the things that we discovered is we need healing. We need healing because we have a new framework for how we're going to learn language. So that's how we need to look at it. So forgive us, you know, and if you don't forgive us, then we're going to make you get up here and dance with us. So I want Linda, come forward, please. Linda's one of our best Hadkil women that we have, and I would like her to tell you what the song is about. Sorry if I just said to forgive us. Okay.
Okay, so we felt like we wanted to express to the University of Fairbanks for inviting us here and being amongst all of you language warriors. And so last evening we got together and came up with this song, and the translation is, oh my gosh.
Called it Strength, and we
Yeah,
called
the name of it is Strength, and we are getting our strength from all of you, and we're counting on the strength that we are receiving from you.
Yeah, that's perfect. Okay. And the only other thing is that when we get done dancing, then we're going to call Yvonne up. Because you're not getting out of this, Yvonne. No, I'm joking. And one thing Haidas do, one thing we do all the time is we say, how-ah, how-ah, how-ah. Okay, here we go.
So I forgot to mention the word kwagidung is the part where we're counting on you, and dagui guy is the strength. So
Yo, thank you, Jada. So now we're gonna call up our brother because, like I said, Yvonne, how to say how, and we should sing a little song, everybody, that we know, so he could dance his gift. All right, that's how we do it. We don't have a scarf because we don't dance with scarves. So Marita said to get the scarves. I guess a 1, 2, 3, just a hawa from everybody. 1, 2, 3. Thank you. You have no idea. You have no idea, buddy. Okay, well, let's sing a song. He's going to dance. Let's see, what's a jazzy one? Everyone knows the gambling song, right? Do you? Want to do the, what's jazzy? Come on. Jazzy. Yeah, Damia. Okay, swan song. Man, you can dance.
How I gotta catch my breath. um, I'm really really thankful for the gift, and it's amazing how things go because I needed a little bit of lifting up again this morning, because I was reminded this morning that there's a lot of pressure on many of us in this work that we're doing, and probably all of us in some form or another have some pain still, and that healing message of your song, I think, is a perfect opening this morning for this conversation that we're going to have now on where are we going. And this morning, again, I was reminded that, you know, we all do the best we can in the work we're doing, and sometimes we don't realize, too, that sometimes there's pain that enters into the space because of some of the way that we might have said something, even if it wasn't what we were intending, and because we're all growing as human beings. And so I just really appreciate that message in the song and the gift. So with that, I want to acknowledge a few guests that we had join us this morning. First, our Lieutenant Governor Byron Malott, who's joined us. And at the end of the conversation here, I'm going to ask him to come up and share some reflections with us as well. Really appreciate you coming up, Byron. I think it sends a message to us as people in the state that our languages are really important, and we're glad to have you here with us. And then we also had another guest who I'm going to invite up to join us on the stage for this conversation, and she's been involved in advancing the work for Alaska Native people in so many different issues, and I feel like she's almost everywhere all of the time, and I don't know how she does it, packing all the time, and that's Liz Medicine Crow from the First Alaskans Institute, and I know she's in here somewhere. So with that, in this session, I would like to now invite up the members of the Alaska Native Language Preservation Advisory Council to join me on stage, as well as Liz Medicine Crow. So members of this advisory council have been working diligently for years outside of their role on this advisory council, but as members of the advisory council now for, I think, maybe 6 years or so, really putting their minds and energy and work into thinking about how we make a change for our languages. And so I really want to begin by us giving them a round of applause and thanking them for the work that they've put in for all of us. And this conversation, just to recap our conversations from the last couple of days, we opened on that first day and with this conversation about where are we at. We talked about the numbers of faculty that we have in the university, the number of schools that we have that are teaching through immersion across the state. And then on Tuesday, we moved forward and talked about a vision and visions that we have for ways to move forward. And this morning's conversation is going to be about this conversation about how do we expand and create new opportunities to learn our language and to use our languages on a daily basis. What's it going to take for us to move forward? And I want to acknowledge that there's a lot of activity that's already happening at the community level, at the local level, in families, in the small language nests, in the language camps that are happening across our land in our state. And that work is really important to continue to grow and advance. But with the short amount of time we have this morning, we're going to focus a little bit more on the systems that we have within our state at the state level, at the Alaska Native Language Preservation Advisory Council level, some at the K-12 system across our state in our schools, here within the university, and maybe some with other tribal organizations and state agencies. So what you're going to hear in this conversation is some around what are some of these big picture systems, thoughts, and ideas that are moving forward right now around language. And we're going to have the ANLPAC kind of guide us through that conversation with the group that's here. Following the conversation, we'll have Lieutenant Governor Malott share a few remarks, and then what we're going to ask of you all is to have some conversation around your tables around some of the ideas and conversation that you heard up here, and provide some of your input and thinking that then will be received by the Alaska Native Language Preservation Advisory Council, as well as the others of us that are in the room that do work within these institutions, so we can get some of your input into how we're going to move forward with some of these changes. So that's my framing for the conversation this morning, and with that, I'm going to hand it over to Hune.
Gulchish. Shukwayach to Wasagu. Yachlish has the idea Akwabus Ahiti de Shi. One Kanin Zayashedzi Yahayajini. Yewa just Kunach away a Dayin Aya, what to a knock, what to Satin. Asashishk Aya has the Kanugu, yet ark away yet late car. Kaidihin Aya Ach in a Kawanig. Tell it to wool chishik. Wasa ishan dain har kawashu, tletelka tuwa ushkahayuk atangi. Yashakshani aya ach ina kawani. Golchat aya yisatin. Golchat yisatin, helchas khatqa. Ya ach lil kutlain ach in xati an kadachtzin. Hutser du shat kash to lik. One kanins uchke yuti awe ach kosti. Aka ach kukik. Has kuwat laknuch. Yen hawune yuhan. Has to itch yan to at. Ya haslil ko has. Yidat tso. Hach eid. Hasewa ach aya. Konachwe has to toasagu. Yautu wadaki. Aka ye kwati. Achwe tel ade. Tel akade. Sakach hasak wak aya. Has to tunigu. Ako wutusaku haanika aya nak kudziti. Wutusaku aya kwal akaktukak akahande haslakwakuk. Ya awa hakusti. Kunilchish awe. Yaltakatwe hatas ayeti a. Taklikudzi awe yishi. Kunilchish jahawa. Yanking du lagen. Kunachoyatina chayeti. We katu nagu. Wujin aya. Chakleichiach yeti. Ya yagiyuhan. Ya achdat aya. Yituchwatan kunach awe. Ya Khashatahani, Annette Evans Smith. Ya awa. Dukage yes aya yejik kone. Ka hastsu hatachhan kiyan. Ka hastsu hatlil kohas. Yidat kunach awe yikach aya hatuwuk lakaitsu Dolores Churchill. Ya hawa. Ya ha'in khusatiyan ya achawe. Juaya hajit aya awashi. Ekashatsin aya hajiyeti. Gunilchish. I just wanted to share a number of thoughts as we sort of open this panel about where do we go from here. In particular, I wanted to ask for help, because sometimes this work is just so daunting. We're just looking right at a horrendous attempted genocide of our people. Shakshani Marge Dutson once told me in Tlingit, it's impossible for you to understand how much we suffered when nobody wanted our language. And so we think about that suffering. We think about that pain. We also think about methods of relieving ourselves of the burden of loss and getting to a point where we're celebrating a place where that loss seems impossible. I know a number of us have talked about a vision that sometimes we knew that this was going to happen. Our old people, they could see far into the future. And so as we bring our languages back and as we begin to continue the work that's already been done, sometimes we need to pause and just think about the ways we ask for strength. You see me sitting here, but it's not me, it's the other Khone who have existed. It's my uncles and aunties who have taught me. It's my great-grandparents who were standing here with me. And when I struggle, they whisper into my ear. I think of Shkate Jesse Johnny, who said, we're starting to follow them. They're just really listening to us now. So we're entering into these various realms, and a lot of it takes place here, and it takes place in particular on our own land. And we just really pray for a lot of peace and like a slow-moving body of water, because when things start moving too fast, we know that it gets out of control. Those of us on the Alaska Native Language Preservation and Advisory Council, we're honored to do this work, and we try our best. We're thinking in particular about Annette Evans Smith, who is the chair of this board, of this council. And we're thinking of her as she's making a recovery, and we also want to acknowledge our cherished and wonderful and brilliant genius elder, Dolores Churchill, for the work that she did on this council. It's as if she touched our hands, and then there was strength in our hands to do this kind of work. So we're going to frame this in 3 parts, because sometimes envisioning, well, what are we doing? Oh, we're just changing everything, right? Whatever. And we're just kind of undoing genocide. But we can look at our language. There's this, Khalkhawu Cyril George would talk about this place, Khatuwu Kasakeyihin, the place that untangles your thoughts. And there's a verb in there that's very neat in Tlingit. a kawake or a kausake. It could mean to track the footprints of an animal or a person. It could mean to undo your sewing or your weaving. It could also mean to untangle something. And that shows how our ancient people looked at those things. And that you can go to a place on your land that's going to untangle your mind. So sometimes the knot gets undone by things that are outside of you, and you have to understand that you're just this one little part. And so I'm very thankful for everyone here for the work that you do. So this will be kind of divided into 3 parts because I don't want to get myself tangled. One time I know we were talking about grammar yesterday. I was going over some grammar, and this elder said, it's like my mind got tangled in a seine net, he said. And so we're gonna move through in chunks and rely on the brain power that's up here with my colleagues. So the Alaska Native Language Preservation Advisory Council can sort of categorize its recommendations right now into these 3 sort of categories. And we're here. You can contact us if you have other ideas, if you think there's something that we're missing. We're trying to focus on all these other components too and just say, what are the next big moves so we can get ready for this coming legislative year, and also to do it right now. We have a governor and a lieutenant governor who are listening to the things that we're saying. So I'm going to sort of frame this, and then I'll hand the microphone along so that folks can think about their thoughts. And the one driving question I have for my colleagues here is, how do we do this? You know, and sometimes it's a big question. But then also just what are your thoughts on how we implement some of these changes? Because we're not going to be here 5 years from now saying, man, I wish we would have done these things and these things. We're going to be here 5 years from now saying, okay, now on to the next thing, like we've been talking about. On to the next thing. Watch this thing build strength. So the first is thinking about what the state of Alaska could do on sort of an emotional level, and not just the state of Alaska, but also us. We're already doing this work. So we really want to push back on the misconception that we're asking the state of Alaska to do something for us. We're asking the state of Alaska to do something with us. And that is first to issue an official apology for what happened. Not that the state of Alaska was solely responsible, but that the state of Alaska did have its part, and maybe by stepping forward can encourage other entities that had a part in the attempted destruction of indigenous languages to step forward and say, we did that, and that was wrong, and we are sorry. Along with that is a declaration. I would call it a statement of cherished existence. If the state of Alaska comes out, the highest elected official in the state, and says, there's nothing more valuable than these 20 Alaska Native languages. You could say that without saying these are more valuable than English. That's not what we're saying. But for the state of Alaska to come out and say that, it really gives us a lot of energy because we've heard it go the other way for a long time. Part 2 would be a declaration of official state support for Alaska Native language schools and programs. These would be language nests, language schools, and then programs in existing schools. One idea is to call them laboratory programs, or maybe we come up with a better term, but it's basically the state of Alaska saying, we are willing to make exceptions to the way that we do things until we figure out how to do this thing better, because we've brought these languages to the brink of their death. The third part is to be a part of listening sessions across the state of Alaska to talk about what has happened to our languages and our people and how we begin a process of healing and amending. You've got to mend the people back with their language in a lot of situations. And we do have languages that are very strong, but they also have pain in their community. So those 3 things, I'm just asking for your thoughts on those 3 particular things, and then we have 2 other categories after that. galchish.
Koyana. Chemaya ngayut siluhtua tang hamchi achnachbak kadochluda mani chestun nuachechbet anechdochluku. I'm so proud to be among such a group, both here on the stage as well as here in the room, of so many accomplished people with so many things that could be taught and shared. I want to share about when our State Language Council got started and how, as new members of a new council, there was no structure in place. There was a lot of things that we were told we couldn't do. And we didn't know if we could say no to those no's. It immediately began to feel, in that first couple of years that we were back in a place of struggle, that we were trying to send out a message, but without resources, without funding, and without any governmental powers of our own for any sort of regulation. I personally had thoughts, is this language council a Band-Aid, or is this language council even going to make a difference for the survival of languages in our state? I admit that I had those doubts because now I feel like we've finally gotten traction as a council. We've become stronger in our messaging, and I think that came through in the report that was published early this year, our third report released, and the first one that really got a lot of press and attention within the state. I think the reason that our newest report received more attention was that section about declaring emergency declaration for Alaska Native languages, and that's something that's still in process. But I think that sometimes you do need to make those big statements in order to really get the attention and sort of shock people into action. In the 6 years that we have had the Language Council, we've continually noticed statewide disparities in language programming, grassroots organization within different regions, communities. Some regions have municipal or governmental support for their language planning or their language councils. Other regions, such as my region in Kodiak, has a more grassroots, less structured way of doing our language revitalization with different entities taking a little piece of the larger work goal for our language survival. And then I talked to other cousins who are struggling with no real structure, with no central place to come together and talk about how we are going to move forward with our languages. And I want to see all of our people in the state have equal opportunity to access structures like that and support systems like that. A big part of that will be sharing information with each other and coming together regularly in gatherings like this so that we can talk through things like these suggestions and ideas that have been shared this morning in this handout. These are just ideas at this point, but they've been touched on in recent meetings of the State Language Council, thinking about where the council fits best within the state government structure. Considering a possible name change to the council, given that the council's name includes the word preservation, which makes some people think about jam. So, a lot of these things are starting points for discussion of what direction we want to go. But I want to bring back that idea that I mentioned the other day about the Angyak. We can't be successful in reaching that destination if we're leaving some of our people behind. If some of our communities don't have access to what other communities have, then the only equality we have is in our disparity. And we need to consider that every step of the way. Koyana.
Koyana bak April. Wanga yayuk in Piakton. Ayang ma aderiga ayaga mama nuga. Kero tama aniwa gurunga sakna zomi. Kanoro akang mama exigate na luak miut na lugate sawagit nangijvimi. Siulia anerladakman kalega uva kulitianga. Kulitiga. Pipiniga taktung sama hospital mat nami uing misama tardi siganga imanam pianga. Nalugi ka magawa nalakmit kanokok. Yak nilaktuat. Aglan nyukin sama sit kudin ag malugit. Tam na uva yak ni anirok siyak aniluni kanokok sit kudin. Tema ni yak ni wata anisungin lak nagotun. Ima agak sinakaya tatuk uigalo niyak siyarok anirok. Ima atkan suksak suksyam agligayanga atkan udukop mi over agliyanga kerut tabi sorry tema na inipirak tilunga kisian ang yuga isku reak mata naluak mi utin kanira zoak mata nunukeged nomi iskur mi ilisiortok naluak mi rak namik ilisiortok imate manapiranga iskur reak tonga uva talimanig ui ruanga kangyak sisuit kika magawa kanik tuat kit kuwan magawa tam na uva naluak mi aknak kiniregia sunik te makaniradok kangyak sisuit kia atlat magawa migyak kiniregia lain yak oh teku nga kalanga malikliwit ima kinak tuin nalugit tamat ko kangyak sinetuat kite may ilit pazuk tung kanalak mi rak namik good morning class how are we today tam nagkangyak siga oh ublalot yak nagugalwak pida good morning my name is Yayuk Bernadette Alvana Stimful but I love the French pronouncing better Bernadette. So where it comes from, I've traveled to France to listen to that. But I just told a short story of my birth. I was born on the east end of Nome because that's where the King Islanders had settled since 1964. I was born and raised there by my grandmother without any English. She did not allow any English in the house. When my older brothers came home from school, they tried to speak in English to me, but they got a severe scolding. No, don't speak English to her. She'll learn at school. And that's what happened. I learned at school. And I was just telling an account of, I would listen to English and I had no idea what was going on because I didn't understand the teacher. This, in my mind, this big white lady. And I watched the other students, and by watching and learning and observing, because our languages, I know in Yupik and Inupiaq, are very observational languages. The men have to communicate to each other while they're out hunting. The women always keep watch when we're out on the tundra for picking. I'm afraid to go picking in the trees, by the way, because we have no trees. So because our languages are, I know about Yupik because we have Yupik speakers in my region, Bering Strait region. It's the same thing. We can read people. My grandmother taught me how to do that in Inupiaq because she always wanted me to be in a safe place. We can tell, and then one of my aunts told me, my older aunts, you can always tell if a person is a good person, and I was really curious. We're not supposed to ask questions, so I just sat and listened to my grandmother until she explained to me maybe what's toddlers that can move or crawl or start walking, 2 to 3 years old maybe. If they come up to a stranger and be friendly, then that person is a friendly person and that person is okay to be around. But as soon as the toddler gets afraid, starts crying and don't want to go to that person, there's something about that person to avoid. So we were taught all these, I was taught all these communication, how we read people. There's a lot more lessons that I was given by my mother and my oldest sister. So when I tell non-Native people, I've been in education for 25 plus years about that, that's how we assess our people. You know, we've been assessed in school by paper and pencil, and nowadays it's the computer. So, but we have our own ways of assessment. We have our own ways of educating our people. We have our own way of how learning happens. Inupiaqtun, yuhtun, however, you know, in our language. So in 2012, when I first met these people with Annette, I was just going to turn 60. And I had decided when I turned 60, I'm going to say whatever I want, wherever I want. The only bad thing that could happen to me is I might be fired. That's okay. As long as I'm given a ugruk to cut up and dry the meat and make the seal oil, I can pick the greens, I'll be fine. So something Annette, you know, and we had our first introductory at that one little office place in the state building. And my first words are, this council has to be from the indigenous point of view. We cannot be, I don't remember what I said, bossed or told what to do by the state or by the government. It has to come from our own, because we know how to assess people. We know how to assess ourselves and our behaviors and what is correct and what is wrong. So we had our first meeting and going to lunch. Annette, you know, she's tall, especially when she wears heels. She looks out and says, "You are really brave." I said, "Well, I'm going to be 60. I could say what I want." So it's been a great beginning ever since. I really got to know Dolores Churchill. We can look at each other and we've communicated. So, because if you put your eyebrows up, you're saying hi. So I'll do another little activity after we hear from Waki.
Qoyanaqfat tamaqpchi qoyuqaqluji kwanihuaqua waqpak Mani University of Alaska Fairbanks ami ayagniqpailgma okut jiwlagit makut umyoqluki mantlhat Mana University pioqpailgan qoyavikluki tamakut jiwlagit una okutlujali ilan ka Ivanamlu illai ukut makut mani jali malrit alagniqpap manna pioqtskluku, and for that masicho. And for all the people who've been helping to make this possible, masicho. And Gumakawa mangakmiunga mani University of Alaska Fairbanks ami nakistunga yuhtun. And my name is Waki Charles, and I'm faculty here at the University of Alaska Fairbanks. And first and foremost, I want to thank the ancestors of this land on which we are gathered for the past few days or next few days. And I want to acknowledge also Ivan Peter and his staff for making this opportunity possible for all of us to get together in the name of language. And I can't go anywhere in this room and not acknowledge, hear any single one of you not related to any kind of language. And this is a really, really sacred space where, you know, we're able to celebrate that which was shunned from us in the past. And there was never room for any of our languages to be incorporated in rooms of instruction created by the standards of those outside our own indigenous peoples. And for that, I'm really humbled, honored, the fact that we can get together like this. And one of the things that we've just talked about with my UPIC group is that we don't have very many opportunities like this to share. And this is a great conference, but this is the first time that we've really gotten together like this to collaborate, to share, what our needs are and those kinds of things. And we just, I know we have 4 amazing days, but we need 4 amazing days more. And so I think that's our way of saying Koyana Jaknak for this opportunity at least. And I know this is one of the very first of very many, I hope. And because I want to see more of these kinds of things. As we look here, I just want to acknowledge my colleagues, and we're all teachers. Une just got tenure at University of Alaska Southeast. And he teaches Tlingit at the university. Ishik and I graduated through the same program. We got our PhDs, and Ishik is a Lutik from Kodiak and works at the museum right now, and has taught at their college, Sukstun. And so she's got many hats, and we're so excited to have her. And we have our big sister Yayuk, who's worn lots of hats as well. Inupiatun, she's taught Inupiatun, and a scholar. She's just a plethora. She may be short in stature, but watch out. She's got lots to share and lots to teach, and so we're honored to have her. And we also have Dolores Churchill, who's been our auntie at the beginning of this Alaska Native Language Advisory Council. And so she's just a few years above 60, and so she could say whatever she wants to say, and make sure that we behave. And so for that, I wanna acknowledge and Hawa for everything that you've done to guide, especially as we were getting started. And you see here on this panel, we don't have everybody, and we don't have all the languages represented. That does not mean that Dina Ina is not in our hearts, or any other language. Ubigustun is not here either. But know the fact that we, as your brothers and sisters, represent every single one of your languages. And we're here as a voice to the office of the governor. Your needs come to us, and so we relay these to the office of the governor, so that things happen. Initially, April said this earlier, that we had a format by which we followed, and we had to vet everything that came out of our mouth. And at the beginning, of the very first year, it was like, no, you can't say this, you can't share this, you cannot do this. And I felt at the first year, and I'm the inaugural chair of this council. And what an honor, and what a tough role it was the first year, because we couldn't say anything. We couldn't share anything to the people who needed to hear the most. But fortunately, our voices became stronger, and we gained access, membership, and ownership over the council to where we could say whatever we damn well want to say, on behalf of everybody's language and language needs. And so we may be small in number, but with every single one of you, we're just as strong, because all of you gives us that strength to make certain that our languages don't go to sleep. our numbers are decreasing. And one has gone to sleep. But that doesn't mean that we can wake them up again. Because it takes every single one of you, and I want to acknowledge every single one of you who is here on behalf of your own heritage language. Because without you, our babies wouldn't be speaking anymore. So I just, you're here for a purpose, and that purpose is something that I hope, we were talking about kindling and fire yesterday in one of the talks, and I want to make certain that, Larry, thank you for sharing that in your talk yesterday. Yes, that flame that doesn't, it's not going to go away. And so, and it takes every single one of us. I want my Gwich'in folks to be able to share with me what maybe I might be able to learn about my delivery of the Yuhtun language. And Haida, people from Haida Gwaii, you know, I want that same thing too, because maybe I'm doing something that I could maybe change in ways by which I could strengthen my ability to deliver that language that my kids at the university really need. And so I'm going to stop now. But the thing is, I just want to let you all know that this council is your council. We are your voice, and we're small in number, but we listen, and we want to listen more because we want to make sure that the whole state of Alaska knows that we do have a council that is heard at the governor's office.
Okay, I told you earlier that we'll do a little activity. Well, we seem to have people sitting all the time. No, I won't do an exercise story, but we'll, when I hear apology that, you know, from the state of Alaska that's due to our people, and then when I hear our listening sessions, we've had many listening sessions since we started in 2012. And earlier I mentioned that our native languages are very observational languages. You have to, when you learn our languages, you have to listen, you have to watch, you have to know your students. And then that's how we know our students are learning, is by watching and observing. And through that, we can tell who's not ready to learn, who's not ready to go on, and also, and watching our young people. Where I work now is the Eskimo Heritage Program at Kawaruk. It's our nonprofit organization for the Bering Strait region. I'm the Eskimo Heritage Program Director. We also staff our Elders Advisory Committee. It's a committee of 9 members of elders from throughout our region. We have 15 village communities and 20 tribal councils that we work for in Nome. So, and our elders from my region are very, very concerned of our young people because they watch them at home and the happenings that are going on. And they're very, very concerned about what they're going through that came from the older generations, and without understanding what happened to their elders, what happened to their great-grandparents and their grandparents. And so they're being raised without that full indigenous knowledge. I want to say Inupiaq, but you're not all Inupiaq. But and then I also assist our elders at Nome, the King Island elders, were Uguvang Mute, and we meet and So I'm an elder in training with them, and I have to listen to what they ask me to do. And there was one that I felt very, very uncomfortable doing. Literally, it was scolding our young people that to do our dances properly, because we have dancing protocols that are unheard. They're unsaid rules. And when you're raised in a dance group or dance places in a dancing space, you, as a small child, you start learning what you're not supposed to do in public. And of course, thank goodness we have teasing cousins. Your mother's father's kids are your teasing cousins. Your mother's sister's kids are your teasing cousins. And it's supposed to do it in public. So that's what kept us happy. Everybody's looking at each other. How are you related to me? The other set of cousins are partner cousins, and you work together, you help each other. So some of that has been kind of lost in my community over the time that the King Islanders are forced to live in Nome, and some have moved elsewhere. So those, over time happened. And so the elders were giving me the charge to literally, in quotes, scold our young people. And it took me a week to figure it out. And I did it so that every single person is honored. And we'll just do a short version of it here. So if you're a fluent speaker of any indigenous language, please stand up. Nugupidisi, please stand up. Sorry, I gotta use my teacher voice. And if you can understand your any indigenous language, please stand up. Davra, yay. Ako pidisi, sit down. Koyana, thank you. Iliranamik. And for people that can say just a few words, can understand some, please stand up. And for those people that don't, Nanan, stay standing. I'm not done. For those people that cannot understand a native language and indigenous language, please stand up. Please stay standing. And this is what I did for our young people and for the board, because it was for our corporation. On behalf of us that speak fluently an indigenous language, we apologize. Their experiences were hard when they were sent home, so they chose not to speak. Or for the younger people, we became so colonized, think only in English, you weren't spoken to in your language. And I'm on behalf of fluent speakers and elders and cultural barriers, we are so sorry. Tabra, thank you. Now you can applaud. So for those of you that stood last, you're the future, you're our hope, you're the one that will carry the torch and keep that flame lit. And for those of you that stood up first, let's light their flame. Kuya
So on to section B, and I want to sort of frame a little bit of this as well with some narrative. There's a very important sort of thing, and Southeast people, both Tlingit and Haida, and I'm Haida, I'm Tlingit, I'm Yupik, I'm Sami. I'm the tiny bit of my father's father's father was English, so I believe I'm a prince of something. I didn't get my invitation to the royal wedding. There was mix-up in the mail. But the Haida and Tlingit people love things in fours, and I think Hawaiians do as well. I really want to acknowledge my Hawaiian teachers, Pila, Larry, Keiki. Every time I'm around them, I just get all these ideas, and so it's very fun to just sit with folks who are just visionaries and who just dreamed it and made it, you know. And then with our Mohawk friends, Deho and Brian, we've been admiring your programs for a long time. So it's very fun to make the real connections. And Deho's my buddy. We behave a lot together. But when we think of things in fours, the language, the people, the land, the spirituality. And so we're trying to do a reconstruction of those four things. I was in a meeting at our university, and I was just sort of given an update, and I was like, oh yeah, and we're working with the U.S. Board of Geographic Names and the U.S. Forest Service to come up with a way to just get rid of all these silly colonial names, because these things already had names. I don't even know who Gastineau is and Mendenhall, and they're not important to me in my life. And beyond that, there was a name there. And one of my colleagues said, because I just picked a name from Juneau, I said, Mendenhall doesn't mean anything to me. And he says, well, Mendenhall means something to me because I've been hiking around there for 10 years. I said, well, I'm not talking about like an emotional connection. I'm talking about the literal word, Mendenhall. I said, it doesn't mean anything. And he says, yeah, but it's been called that for like 100 years. And he said like 100, like it was a big deal, right? So I said, okay, I don't like to embarrass people. So I said, okay, well, imagine this. Let's say you have a grandma and her name is Susie. She's 90 years old. And I meet her and I call her Ella. And you say, and then after a while, and maybe this goes on for a little while, and then you say, my grandma's name is Susie, not Ella. And my response to you is, I've been calling her Ella for like 3 days now. And so yeah, in this framework, so one thing that we're talking about, to get to the point, we encourage the state of Alaska to stand behind an effort to restore all the Alaska Native place names and to put these colonial names, and to push these other names into an also known as category. So the official names are the Alaska Native places, and there'll be a lot of pushback from this. And I've seen people who've published articles in the newspaper who says, here's the framework of their argument. One is, we're erasing some sort of history. I'm like, we're actually acknowledging the history, right? Part two is, well, nobody knows how to pronounce it. And then the answer to that is, well, there's people who speak those languages, and they're not a bunch of nobodies. And human beings can learn languages, right? I mean, so that's under section B. Sorry, my brain is trying to stay untangled. This is point number 4 under section B. The second one under this section is to collectively, for the state of Alaska, the governing system, the legislature, the governor's office, and the University of Alaska, to collaborate and commit to teaching as many Alaska Native languages as possible without charging tuition. Part 3 is a long-range vision that in order to graduate from high school or from college, you have to take 1 semester of an Alaska Native language. So this is a section of 3 fairly assertive statements, and it's enacting decolonization. Just say this land has a name. When we say that name, we're living this sacred connection that goes back tens of thousands of years. People should not have to pay to learn their own language. There should be opportunities, and we've been saying for years, I think we've made a lot of legislative accomplishments. But one could argue that we've really just convinced the state of Alaska to say these are important. But now it's time to actually to do something. If you want to talk in our culture, you got to put down some money. You got to make sure that you're out there and you're doing things for your people. For the requirement, and I think people will, there'll be some people who freak out about this. Somebody who's from this neighborhood, I talked about the other day, said in this very dramatic voice, I believe, to my sister Liz Medicine Crow, who I have to acknowledge as she's my brain trust. I can text her at 2 in the morning and she'll respond because I've got this idea that comes to me at 2 in the morning. So he said to her, like, so dramatically, we are one step away from mandating Alaska Native languages. And then he left and we were like, just one? I was like, rad, you know, so. But, so again, turning back to this panel, this particular brain trust, and we know you guys have wonderful ideas. You know, we're not trying to say we've got all the ideas, but we're just trying to sort of say, through listening sessions, through brainstorming sessions, through lobbying efforts, through communications with indigenous language leaders in other places, these are our sort of, we're narrowing down our focal points because we have to really put this energy in to get these substantial changes. And I believe that this is something we can do. I didn't believe that we could make our languages co-official languages of Alaska, but we did because we framed it, you know, one of our strategies, I don't tell anybody, was we said if anybody wants to oppose us, we want to make them look like the most racist person that has ever lived because we think they'll be scared of that. That was one part of our strategy. Another part of our strategy was to have a multi-pronged approach. We picked people that we knew could give a certain message. An elder who could sit there and talk about being hit for speaking her language. Talk about her uncle who is still alive and who still cries when he recalls what he went through. And then, you know, I could go there and give them, you know, facts and information and other things like that. So, my panelists, under Section B, what are your thoughts? I'm not trying to get you to solve this thing. What are your thoughts on pushing these 3 initiatives forward?
Ganashchish Hawa. I'll just introduce myself so you all know who the language groupie is on stage. I'm just a big fangirl. Hashtag fangirl of every single one of you and of these people here. Karala is good people. Nun Kwaigar Gitkianans, Hinudi Nan Kiagan. Nun Kwaigar Gitkianans was my grandmother, Mona Jackson. She was born Mona Ingram from Haida Gwaii. Her mother remarried into Heidelberg. And so when she was brought to Heidelberg, she became Mona Frank. And when she married my grandfather, she became Mona Jackson. She was a teacher in our village of Kihkwan. Ganahek Hinu di Chan Kiagan. Ganahek was my grandfather. Hatlagadagan, he was Tlinget. Stathkawas Hinu di Aukiang. Stathkawas is my mother, Delachini. She's a weaver and a teacher. Bilchini Hinu di Khatkiang. Bilchini is my father, and he lives in our community. He's retired now. Laganai Hinu di Khadkil Dikiang. Lagunai is my Haida name. And when I was given the name, my grandmother told me it meant woman with a busy life. Decades later, I learned that it meant woman who likes to throw big parties. So from a young age, my non was trying to censor me and keep me away from the party life. um, um, Gatsaka skustu dikwalagan. I am Eagle. Chichkitne ud ijong. I am a Chichkitne woman, and our crest is the hummingbird. I'm just learning my languages. I was one of the ones that stood up at the end through Bernadette. Through her apology, and it's been an emotional journey, but a really powerful one, as you all know, way better than I. I am also Tlingit, so I'm trying to learn both. Chatsas yu chatu asauk. Chatsas yu chatu. Yech na chatsati. Kach adi ayachat. Kichwan ayahat. I'm so humbled to be here and to be able to listen to everything that's already been shared. I don't know if any of y'all people have ever gone into a church when they've been in a real spiritual, like, prayer, singspiration, and they've been in this space, and you walk in and you can just feel this like burst of just love and warmth. And that's how it felt when I walked in here. We're in the church of our languages, is how it felt. And I say that in the most decolonizing way possible. So I'm just really honored to be here and to be here in support of all of you and to see so many of your beautiful faces. And for those that I know, I just love you up and hug you up. And for those that I have yet to meet, I look forward to it, and I'm going to love you up and hug you up then too. Ganesh Chishawa for having me here.
I've been thinking about what all of my colleagues up here have been saying, and one thing that I noticed when Liz was talking is that, you know, on this stage, just in the short time we've been up here, we've had laughter, we've had tears, we've had serious moments, lighthearted moments, and to me that is what we get back when we bring our languages back. Yesterday in our language group, after spending most of the afternoon the previous day trying to figure out what we wanted to do in our group and writing up a bunch and talking in English the entire time, we decided yesterday, let's set a different tone. We decided to stay in immersion for at least the first half an hour of our meeting in the morning, and it changed the tone of the whole day. It brought our elders into a really engaged sense of light. Our learners were paying close attention. And even though we moved on to then work on, you know, lesson planning and database development, it felt like that feeling of that positive energy that Liz was talking about really carried us through the day. And when I look at what our language groups are doing, and when I think about our own language group, I think that we need to continually return to that place and remind ourselves not only of what we're doing here, but also is what we're doing the way that we want to be doing it. How do we as Native people modify those structures that we've learned in the university to be more indigenized, to be more localized? Because even though we have other successful language programs to model after, what happens at the ground level in each community has to be customized for what works for each community. Every different community is dealing with a different number of fluent speakers, different numbers of available learners and teachers, and so there's not a one-size-fits-all model. And I think the way that we're going to need to address that as a state is to continually come together and increase the technologies and the face-to-face methods that we use to share information with each other. Whenever I come to these events, I end up picking up materials from other communities and thinking, wow, we could do this in Kodiak. And I'm hoping that all of us will come away from this gathering with similar resources, materials, ideas, phone numbers. I'm going to be getting Liz's so I could text her at, I'm not usually awake at 2, I usually get up at about 4, so I hope that's okay. And I want the younger learners, the new generation of learners that's right behind my generation to feel like they can reach out to me in the same way. Maybe not in the middle of the night. Usually I go to bed at 8:30, just keep that in mind. But I want us to all be resources for each other and intentionally tell each other, I'm available to you. I want you to call me. I want you to come to me. I want you to come to my office and tell me what you're struggling with so that I can help. I think the elders feel the same way. They want to help us, but they don't always know how to help us. They are here with such open minds, and they're willing to try whatever we want to do. Yesterday we were doing some where are your keys techniques with our elders, and they were very open to it, and we need to be sure to appreciate the elders for stepping outside of their comfort zone and trying all these new techniques for sharing and transmitting language that are incredibly different from how they learned their languages. I think that's all that's on my mind at the moment, Koyana. We have about 5 minutes left.
I was thinking about the kind of strategy that you were just sharing, and really thinking about the work of this council from its formation to where you folks are today and where we're going to be, like you said, in 5 years, or in 100 years, or another 10,000 years, where we're going to be. And I've been thinking a lot about what it is that we can do to support your work and how we can do that. I was talking with Kune this morning, and I was telling him that one of our ancestors that I think a lot about in the work that we do around advancing our people and making sure that our people are the ones who are making the decisions that are shaping our lives. One of the people that I think about a lot is William Paul. And I remember hearing the story about him, and there are people here who knew him and spent way more time understanding his work than I have had an opportunity to do yet. But one of the lessons that I chew on a lot is his own anger and frustration at our people for only asking for what we thought we could get and never demanding what we knew was right. And we set ourselves up for diminishment whenever we put ourselves in situations with anybody, whoever they are, whatever government they are, when we do not assert the rightness of and the justice of our position, but rather go to them and ask for them to help us to do something. This is not a relationship that is sustainable or healthy. It is a relationship that has kept us down and has kept our spirits down and has been complicit in the destruction of our social fabric and of our languages. And so we have to remember that we have to correct our narrative. We have to correct the way that we think about the different peoples that we're working with who need to be working for us rather than against us. And so when I think about that teaching from William Paul, I think about what is it that we're setting ourselves up for when we create a strategy, whenever we're working towards something that our people say to us, this is a priority. If I'm already saying, well, that'll never happen, we're never going to be able to get that, they're never going to go for it, then I've already done their job for them. I've already negotiated against myself and made it easier for them to keep me in a position that will not allow us to achieve the freedom that we are persisting and existing to have, which is the right to be Indigenous in our own homelands and to speak our languages. And I think about that in terms of how we set these things up. You know, at the last, the second to the last hearing on the House side for the language emergency status resolution, the testimony that Yayuk, Annette, and Kune gave was mind-blowing. The ninja status that they had to display to essentially get across a simple concept of justice and equality. It was inspiring to listen to, but it was embarrassing on the state side that that's the level that things are at. And if you have a chance, go to 360 North and find that testimony and watch it if you didn't have a chance to watch it. Because what they said and what they delivered was really powerful. And being able to acknowledge that, you know, we have this whole room full of language experts. These are the people, you are the people that any policymaker or decision maker needs to be listening to. So when you think about how are we going to do it, don't negotiate against our own position by saying this is all we're ever going to get. What is it that we know is right by our languages, for our people, for our wellness, for our restoration? That's what we need to achieve. That's what we should be envisioning. And if it's anything less than that, then all we're doing is rearranging the chairs on the deck of the Titanic. Right? So we have to be bold. We all have to be 60 years old, saying whatever we want to say to whoever we want to say it to, however we want to say it, so that we can make sure that on our watch, our languages thrive. And so when you're thinking about what is the strategy that's going to move us forward, what is the way that we're going to do this, don't ask, demand. Don't ask, do. And that's how we're going to do this. I'm getting ready to go on our canoe journey down in Southeast. And the last time I went was 2 years ago. And my clan elder, Ruth, who's here, Kanak, who's here, she said to us as we were getting ready to get on our canoe, "You're going into the land of your ancestors. Do not be afraid. They are waiting for you." And so when I think about all of you and the work that you're doing, you are our language canoe. You are the ones who are bringing our ancestors to all of us because you speak their language. And every time you do, you build another piece of health and healing back into us. Every single word you speak in our language not only heals you, but it's the medicine that all of our people need. So when you're thinking about what more can I do, how much more skin in the game can I have, I've got nothing left to give, don't forget that you have to work on your own healing too. And that's the pathway that our languages open up for us. And so what I said earlier about this being the church of our languages, this ceremony that you're in here, you know, the ceremony that you're in is sacred work. And every single one of you are precious to it. And you treat each other that way, right? You're good to each other. You lift each other up. And then when you're not quite your best, you give each other grace so that we can keep this fight up, because we've got 10,000 plus years to make this happen. And we need everybody. And we all need to be bold. And we all need to be loved. And we all need to be fed. And we all need to spend time together on our own healing. So when I think about what is the strategy that's going to work, it's got to be here. Next level. What is it that we actually want? Put that out there. Plan for that. Don't plan for this.
Thank you. I just want to say before we close, I think we're getting near to that. If I could have the Mr. Lieutenant Governor stand up with Ivancho and with Salaktuna. On behalf of the Alaska Native Language Preservation Advisory Council, we'd like to take this time to honor and to thank all of you for making this time possible, and I hope that this is just a beginning of many, many years. And so thank you so much for all your work, and thank you so much for the care that you have and the love that you have to make this happen for all of us.
Hoya Navak Liz, you can come to my house at 2 a.m. and go eat.
You know I will.
I just want to share something small for my closing, because we like to end where in a happy moment. But before that, I'm not sure what year Whipsy happened in Hilo. There was a whole group of us from Alaska that went there, and the title was The Answers Are Within Us. And boy, was that a great moment to realize, yes, we have the answers, and they're in our languages. And then the other thing I want to share is when I was in first grade, we had 2 shifts, morning and afternoon, because the school was not big enough, because the King Island community had moved to Nome and there was no more space. So I was in the afternoon shift from 1 o'clock to 5:30, and my cousin and I would walk to where my brother worked at AC. I think a lot of you know what AC is, because he wasn't done till 5. So we'd stand in the shed area, and especially when it's windy, we need to walk home with someone. I got tired of waiting, and I said to my friend, Asin Udiluk. Udiluk means let's get bald. I meant to say Asin Udirluk. Let's go home.
So we're not going bald. Okay. Really quickly, I just want to touch on part C, which is, we had a lot of things to share. And so this one is it's an idea that we've been sort of trying to talk through. And then it came in a vision at about midnight, finally, which is really trying to say the underlying statement is the systems that are in place were designed to destroy us. Why on earth would we believe in those systems? So we need to figure out a way to breathe the life of our ancestors into those things. So we are co-governing Alaska. And that's what we're really pushing for, is co-governance of education, co-governance of a lot of things across the state. And so our focus right now is on education, which I understand the irony that the school system is something we lean upon, but that's where a lot of our children spend their time. We look at, You know, someone once asked me that, like, are you really sure that the schools are the place to focus? And I said, I have never seen a language that has come back to a place of strength without taking control of the education of its children. So because of that, that's one of our main focus areas. So this handout here, I'll go over it very fast, and we'll invite our Lieutenant Governor up, my Kwashki Kwan uncle, to, we want to give him time to give a response, some remarks to what we've shared here. But one is a transformation, a restructuring of this particular council, the Alaska Native Language Preservation and Advisory Council, and really calling it the Alaska Native Language Advisory Council, moving it to the office of the governor. The only amendment I would have to that is if we formed a Department of Alaska Native Affairs, or I don't know, that sounds too much like DNA or the BIA, but if there was an actual permanent part of the governance of Alaska that really just dealt with Alaska Native people and our organizations, our governments, our nations, our languages. But for the time being, this is what we would propose. And then the development of 2 new organizations. And these purple lines only, it's advisory lines and communication. This is not a governing structure, who's in charge of whom or anything like that. Those are things that would be negotiated over the development of this. However, the second would be developing an organization that I would propose be called the Alaska Native Language Schools Consortium. That is an organization that would work directly with the State Board of Education. So the State Boards of Education currently primarily communicates with and assists school districts, charter schools, correspondence schools. So we would add a 4th category of Alaska Native language schools and programs. And then this would be the organization that helps us sort of take care of that. The next one would be the College of Alaska Native Languages, which would be a statewide organization, a unit of the University of Alaska, which exists on all 3 of its main campuses, and is charged with Alaska Native language teacher certification, professional development, and trying to keep developing the big picture, making administrators for these schools, because the 2 big things we would want to push back on with this, and to do it quite forcefully, is if people say, we are educators and we know what people need. Because that's actually not true, because it's the same system that has resulted in language loss, just continued loss. The second thing is that we're somehow lowering the standards of education. We really need to push back against that and just say, you know, racism is so, what do they say, passé, cliche, outdated. Just get a time machine or go live somewhere else. But just to really say, we're increasing, because when you add things, you add things. So that's the sort of basic direction I think we're going to try and continue to move towards in conversations within our council, conversations with the governor's office, conversations with tribal leaders and leaders who are in education, including those who are leading the charge on compacting in education. So that's where we're at. And I would like to invite Lieutenant Governor Malat up. Oh, do we have something different? Okay, a closing remark, and then, okay, I'll turn it over to Van Peter. Chief.
Let's give them all a round of applause. And I originally, I was mentioning to somebody that this institute, we're kind of running it like we would run a cultural gathering in our village. And so we kind of just go with the flow of how things move and trust that things are moving in the way that they were intended to. And earlier, Hune and I were talking, and he was telling me that I should be up here on the up here on the stage with the chair, but then it just felt right that they were going to be the ones here. But I did want to just add my voice to say that I really appreciate everything that each of you had shared with us this morning, and I agree that right now is the time for us to be bold and to be demanding what it is that we really need for our languages to be moving forward in a really substantive way. My hope was that this institute would be a major spark for us to get our thinking and inspiration and work on our languages, but also to dream as big as we need to. And so one of the things that a few of us have been conversing about is what would it look like for us to have 40 new Alaska Native faculty in the university teaching our Alaska Native languages. Right now we only have 5, so that would be an additional 40. So I just want to share with you some of the scale of what we're thinking initially that we're thinking about moving forward to really ramp up some of the efforts within the institution. We'll see where that goes. This idea that's out here on creating a College of Alaska Native Languages to make a more substantive mass so that we have weight here within the university to be able to push forward on these efforts so that we can continue doing some of the things that we're doing. And so I just want to share that I think that our thinking is moving, and even though we're not going to have time at the close of this session for you to have conversations around this around your table because we went a little bit into our break, I do still want to encourage all of you that if you have thoughts or ideas that came off of anything anyone shared up here in the panel, to please write down some of your thoughts, your ideas, some of your thinking onto the notepads that were provided to you in your bags, and stick them on the big pages that are on your tables so that we can also hear some of your thoughts, some of your ideas of what you think we could be doing within the state to help advance our languages. And you want to
I said a real quick amendment to something I said the other day, which was that Waki and I were perhaps the first tenured Alaska Native language teachers, and that was a tremendous oversight. Edna McLean, my hero, was the first Alaska Native language professor who was tenured at the University of Alaska.
So with that, now it's an honor to invite up Lieutenant Governor Byron Malott to share a few remarks with our convening today. You gonna sit? Yeah, just stay. Our panel's expanding.
It wasn't, as Liz said, for me, coming into church, and she even qualified her statement there. It is coming home. It's coming into a very spiritual place of continuous rebirth for me, I think. I'm old, but I'm not an elder. That will be for others at some point to determine. I'm old enough that I remember when I spoke Tlingit. I remember as a little boy in Yakutat at the time, the town of hardly 250 people, 90% of whom were us. And we lived in a very different way. As I listened and as I contemplated the issue or the fact of our language, just this morning my mind has always been a tangle, and I pull threads. And I'm pulling on a thread now. It is only one. And it goes to the office that I hold today. I'm the Lieutenant Governor of the state of Alaska. I necessarily represent all Alaskans. But it's not why I sought the governorship. And it's not why I am Lieutenant Governor. I decided, as another step on my journey, that it was necessary for me to do as a native person, as a Tlingit. But it brings an incredible dichotomy. Is there a Tlingit word for that? a conflict. And so I want to say something now that I feel I can say here, but outside this room, in the other settings in which I act as Lieutenant Governor, I am not able to say. And it is this. There are Gwich'in in this room, leadership of Gwich'in. I visited their villages. I've been on their land. I know how profoundly and how spiritually they view their reality, who they are, where they come from. The values, the beliefs, the history, tradition that shaped their lives, that have nurtured them and guides them, and that gives them the strength to pass all of that to their own children. I know how strongly they feel about the conflict between continued petroleum development and the lifestyles and the life ways that they live. And yet tomorrow, I will fly to Arctic Village as a representative of the state of Alaska. And I will say things that I hope they understand on behalf of all of the people of the state of Alaska. And it will bring me great discomfort in my soul, in my heart. It's something that I live with. I believe in my soul that what I say on behalf of Alaska is appropriate and timely and necessary. But I also know how it will speak to the people that I truly love, our native peoples, particularly those whose lives can be affected by the policies and the actions of the state of Alaska. And all I can do is in my soul and in my heart and in my actions hope to be part of decision-making and influencing such that the hope, the aspirations, the values, the beliefs, the strength of that people will continue to thrive on the land. And as a Native person and as a public official, I will be dedicated to that every day of my life. I mention this only to illustrate the conflict with which we live every single day. We can talk about genocide, but my children are married to white men. Their parents are those of whom we speak, their grandparents. Our grandchildren, many are part native. I know that we teach them to be whole native in their being. But there is another existence for them. And we must strengthen all of them, every aspect of their lives. I wrestle with this every day. I remember in my mother's kitchen, she's sitting with her Tlingit lady friends and speaking Tlingit and eating native food. And my sisters and I, are at the time, my one sister, sitting at their feet and listening and understanding what they were saying and being able to respond ourselves. And they laughed. And they laughed with no inhibitions amongst them. This was a cannery town. It was a federal installation town, had an airport, there were maintenance people, there were FAA, there was another community. They lived separate from us, consciously so. They had a separate school. And it puzzled me later when I had the capacity to begin putting things in perspective, that in public and in other gatherings where my mother was not completely amongst her own, she didn't laugh. She was uptight. All of her friends were. And I wondered about that. Why? My mother raised her siblings, 4 others, from the time she was 13 years old, because her mother, my grandmother, who was born at a time, almost at the time of contact, and who knew what it was to be native in all of its reality that we can hardly even comprehend now. Her husband, my grandfather, died at a relatively young age, a hardworking Tlingit man from Sitka who moved to Yakutat to be with my grandmother and her family. And my grandmother was left to raise 5 children. And for whatever reason, her strength was not sufficient. And she left town with a cannery superintendent and moved to Tacoma and lived with him there and left her children at home. I'm not speaking of an isolated case. I'm speaking of the reality of our lives, at least mine, at least where I come from. And so I've lived with a rage inside me for my entire life. But I spoke Tlingit. I understood it. And then when I was 6 and my sister was 5, we were sent away to boarding school at the insistence of my parents. So what is that conflict? They wanted us to have a better life. They wanted us to learn English. They wanted us to have an education that would allow us to be successful in this world that dominated them and they could not be part of, and they wanted us so strongly to be part of so that we could be successful in a world that they could not enter. That's parental love. It's human. It has no race, it has no ethnicity. It is in the soul of a being. It is unconditional. And can we despise that? No, we can't, and we do not. So we lead bifurcated lives. We live in our minds in different ways, and we feel pain and we feel rage that lives within us for the rest of our lives. I'm speaking personally. I'm not projecting this onto anyone else, but I want you to know that this is my reality. I'm 75 years, I'm 3/4 of a century. I lived when my parents and my grandparents lived an entirely different lifestyle that was built around their lives as Native peoples, almost unadulterated on a daily basis by contact with a larger society, and yet that larger society completely dominated their lives. And it took the beauty from them, and it took the laughter from them, and it took the soul of my mother, which I want back. A lady who spoke Tlingit in the real way, in the way that was handed down to her by a mother whose language was not adulterated in any way, except from her own mother who lived prior to contact. That's the short distance we are in time and in generations from who we really are. And you're right, we can get there, and we must. When I decided to run for governor, this wasn't in my mind. It was not articulate, but it was there. I saw an Alaska that was changing in ways that the rest of our nation lives now. A place in which there's complete divisiveness, in which you either agree with someone in their strength of belief, or you live another belief and you never come together. You demonize one another. You are destroying our society. You're destroying our democracy. Look at what's happening in our country. And I saw that creeping into Alaska. And you can say, wow, well, why don't we stick to our own knitting and deal with what's close to home? But the reality is, if that is embedded in Alaska, what now is a slope, and a difficult one, becomes a wall, an absolute wall. And let me tell you something. They have the power. I've been a corporate board member of our own Native corporations. I've been a bank board director. I've lived in that world and was always like being this person in the corner, watching this other me deal with directors and CEOs and corporate leaders and finance and being chairman of an audit committee of $1 billion company and all of this stuff. I was there long enough to know its power. And I was there long enough to know that if the institution is threatened, it will do anything to survive. So I say to myself, how do we act? How do we make change such that we get to where we need to get? Recognizing, as I do now, that we must engage with that power. We must engage with that power. And we must do it with conviction and belief and value. And we must know what we want and be able to articulate it. And we must engage in ways that allow for the result we seek. We need to be smart. We need to have the language that forces them to listen. But we must also have the ability to sit down and negotiate. For about 20 years now, as I've looked at my involvement within the Native community, and I was the founding president of the First Alaskans Institute that Liz Medicine Crow leads now. And I wanted so much for that institution to be what it is today and even more. That is, a Native institution to its core that people recognize and that people know deep down represents Native people because it lives those values. Even our language, even the way we conduct our business. First Alaskans' annual fundraising event is a smokehouse gala. You know, how Native is that? And the way we present it is all within the context of our values and our beliefs and the things that we care about. Okay, now I'm going to get to a reaction or a thinking about this morning. First of all, I want to say that I kind of invited myself, and I thank Yvonne for, he and I were meeting on another subject, and he mentioned this event was taking place, and I just said, I want to be there. I really want to be there. We need to engage with our own people. 20 years ago or more, I thought, if there was a way we could have an Alaska Native across the state time out, we need to come together just as Native people and have an internal intervention and really determine our collective priorities and live to them. But the world moves so quickly. We're constantly engaged with so much else that at the moment are hugely important, and they are. Health and welfare and public safety and all of the stuff that we live with that are so important to the people we represent every day. That internal alignment, that coming together as Native peoples and saying, these are our core priorities, and this is what we must strive to. It's not going to happen at a point in time that leads to huge revelation. I think it is happening in the way that you are conducting your work, by calling attention, by grabbing people and saying, listen, and taking action. The legislative action to make all Alaska Native languages official languages of the state happened at a critical moment in time where a single legislator could make all the difference. Of a night, late in the session. And you were there, and that was critical. And no one's going to mention her name in history probably, but Lisa McGuire. At a critical moment, Senator Lisa McGuire made it happen. You were able to influence someone at a critical moment. You stepped in and kept the word emergency in the resolution that the legislature passed because you were there at the critical moment. And you were able to speak truth to power. And that is something we must continue to do. Speak truth to power. A couple observations. We need to speak to our own people. That's part of internal alignment. We need to go to our tribes. We need to go to our village councils. We need to go to our corporations. We need to go to our own power and make this one of their highest, if not the highest priority. The way the world works in reality is power rules. I've noticed, I've lived this in 4 years in Juneau. Power rules. Power determines the timing. Power determines the agenda. Power determines what is dealt with. And you must engage with that power, and I say this very carefully, become part of it, but not consumed by it and not overrun by it. Help determine that agenda. Let me give you a couple quick observations from my 4 years in Juneau. The Native presence is minimal compared to the constant presence of almost every other center of power in Alaska. It's minimal. Number two, Natives are called whiners. In the public context policy of discussion in the Alaska legislature and even within the administration, Natives are called whiners. You want something, but it's unclear. How do we respond? It's foreign to us. How do we get our arms around it? How do we wrestle with it? You whine, but you don't give us answers. You don't give us a path forward that we can embrace. I see it every day. And we're not whiners. We're living the life that we've been allocated, and we're making the best we can. But again, power. If your regional corporations, if your village corporations, when they come to Juneau, they have an open door, at least more open than virtually any other of our institutions. And if your regional corporations and your tribes came and said, amongst everything else that I want to talk to you about, because it is negotiation, among the things that are most important to us is the preservation, the building, the sustaining, the bringing of Alaska Native languages back to our life so that it lives every single day. We must do it collectively. We must do it collectively. Also, what you are doing now is fundamentally important because it is how you come together, and the passion and the vision and the articulation, the statement of why you are here and the importance of language. Everybody understands the importance of language. English, Spanish, whatever. It is innate in us. So let's find ways to make common cause with the celebration and the value of every other language. Let's do it smartly. Let's do it strategically. I remember during land claims, many of you here have heard of or even knew Charlie Edverson, Etuk. He was an incredibly courageous man, and he spoke truth to power at the time like almost no one else. And he would enrage people. He would drive people crazy because he was an outlier. He painted a vision of what we should have, not what we were negotiating for. And he never let people forget it. And after a time of ourselves coming to grips with Charlie and his role and his place and his leadership, we recognized that if we didn't have a Charlie Edwardson, we're going to have to invent one because we needed to have that vision out there. And in the face of power, you know, I have not used the word government once in this conversation with you. I've talked about power and how power is used and where power comes from. And engage with it. Engage with it from your own power, which is passion and value and belief and tradition and history. And one of the things that I say, and it's just me, when people talk to me about, what are you about, Malak? Because I'll raise issues in a gathering internally to government. And whoa, where'd that native thing come from? You know, what is that perspective? And sometimes people ignore it, but most of the time it causes people to think in a responsible way. And that's part of what we must do. But we also must engage with passion and engage strategically and engage with the full force of our own people. Because if our own people, our own institutions across the state cannot say that our languages, for all that they hold in terms of the cradle of our existence and our life and our future, are not among our very highest priorities, it's time to change leadership. But I know that if we do it the right way, it will be embraced. And if lone voices, and you're not a lone voice, can suddenly become, or over time, become a concert. That whenever a native goes to Juneau, whenever a native goes to Washington, D.C., like the word subsistence has become, even though we argue and wonder whether that's the right word. It conveys a belief, a value, a meaning, something that's so important to us we will never let go. Language must become subsistence. And it must be embraced and lived by every single one of our institutions. Holy cow. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to take so much time, Yvonne, I'm sorry. But gosh, I look at Ruth, I look at David, I look at Trimble, I look at Ed, I look at, holy cow, Paul, just so many people in this room that are the true us. And I feel like in my office, in my soul, and why I do what I do, I'm coming here to be given strength, to be given direction, to be given more voice, to be given the strength that I need to continue to do what I do, as little as it is, because our future is in this room. Thank you.
You know, now I have to untangle my mesh. Well, first I want to say to you, Byron, you know, I've been in this position now 4 years at the university in one of the institutions, and I want to share with you that, even though I've only seen a piece of what you've seen of some of the power that you spoke to and those dynamics and the everyday work that it takes for those of us that are inside of these institutions, helping to push for transformation and change so that eventually we get to this point where it's fully acceptable for us to be fully who we are and to share what we really think and feel all the time openly, like the 60-year-olds. And how heavy of a lift and work that is. And to me, I feel like you honored us by sharing with us some of those conflicts and challenges of your world and what you have to navigate daily. And I feel like that personally, and probably many of us in this room greatly appreciate that, because ultimately we need to get to these places where we are comfortable to express and engage in ways that help us to receive that strength and that love from our people and community, but also that direction and that challenge for us to continue forward for those that have found ourselves in this lifetime in positions of leadership. And I just wanted to acknowledge and appreciate your courage and willingness to feel what you felt when you came into this Church of Our Languages, and to share with you. And I hope that you do walk away from this with some of that strength and that you receive here. So just thank you for joining us. And it's funny that you mentioned that you invited yourself, and that was we were having breakfast, and I was telling him about this, and he did say, I want to be there and be a part of this. And so, and that's why I said earlier when I was introducing you, Byron, that I know that our languages are important to you, and I really appreciate those final words that you shared in your comments, that our languages need to become a highest priority right now for our people in this time, because it has to be more than just the state legislature having a resolution declaring that they're an emergency. I think all of our people need to be declaring that and then putting in the effort and taking the action to help revitalize our languages. And tied to that is our healing in our culture, our worldview, our spirituality, as Khune said. So appreciate that. And then I think we had some of the elders from the Tlingit group that wanted to share a few remarks with you.
Thank you very much for the brief time you're going to give to us here. And
talk to him.
Gonna chishi yukatanki wituwa ach ya chutat. Kashki kwan Byron gonna chisha. Achuwe ha yukatanki witusiku. Ka ade yukaitani ye awe aktuwasigu yisakuwu. Ade hatuwu keuslichini ye. Ikatuwahin. Achuwe yat tu nak takat uhan. Gonna cheese ye dia tuka. Gonna cheesha. Joya taku kwan kiyat hatas wu adi yakawe. Wuti yada puskeni. Gonna cheesha. Gonna cheese yes nach itsiti. Gonna cheese yes. Gonna cheese yes. Yuhan you tuwada kawe at wutusiku. Ye ewa ach in kawani kachlit gun chakuakan. Achwe ach tu wutlichin yat wahani kayuka tank yehwa ubu. Chwa ya achlit gun chakuakan ye achia kawa kwanakati. Gonna cheese ye dia chaka. Haslachinia ya hatu ye yati. Yikach hatu wutlike. Byron of the Kwaskwekwan clan, we are very, very proud, those of us that are Eagle and Tlingit. And it's true, the stories that our people told from generation to generation to this very day. That it was the raven who taught us and led us and shared with us. As I sat over there and I listened to the words that you were speaking, I came to realize as if all of our ancestors, not just of the Tlingit nation, but every nation that is represented in here, this place was packed as you are speaking the words of leadership. And even as you hear the applause their tears running down the faces of those who've gone before us. There's smiles on their faces. They're probably cheering like you can't hear it, like a big waterfall coming down as you spoke. And the thing that I want to say, not just because I'm Tlingit, but because I'm native of Alaska. Tell me what state had a lieutenant governor come and talk to the people about their language. We are making history not because we're the very best in the world, but because the language our people had was a language of love and kindness, a language of encouragement, a language of recognition, a language of acceptance, not just of a human being, but even of a moose, a bear, a frog, a beaver, a sockeye, a king salmon, a humpy. This is great. This is family. That's the purpose of language. Family. So we're going to have to borrow our host's drum, but I'm going to turn the mic over to my grandfather. He's another raven.
Kulchishawa, Aklis Kohashangu Kedi, so Taklawedi, Tekwedi, Chakasati, Sanihas Yakiti, to Atas, Kulchisha, Kingeste, Wasa Kindi, Yishatha, Hunch, Kunukatuik Echa. Tlajinuchka, just Uhan dat Tutlaatcha, just Ochtwasigu, Ochtuik Echo, Wasa Tutundatanik Satiha, Hain Kawanikha, Kunach, Wedei, Gatain Wusine Hajiescha, Achkawa Ochtwasigu, dat Yisiku Watsa Tundatani Sitiha. Kunachwa ach at Dudach Hashukakawa Atau Sitinha Wasa de Clark Kunuknuchka Tuwasa du Dudlag Hastu Wustin Hatlat Nuchka. Just wait has to Kusi has our hancha, our ach, wasa has to tunatanik city, segu yakyati. Achkawe, the great wutus ach, hashukakao, to wasa adat, kodikit noscha, the tunatanik city, konakawusi sikhancha, yatlinget, kostedat. To Hawusi Kucha Wasa Tletka, Enach Hasyaticha, John Marian Atcha, Ja Yadachun, Haji Yescha, we Atlitko Has, Yan Hasawasan, Yan Hasawasanecha, we de a cock shuka, Hain Wujetcha. Wasakach to skit yacha. Jadekot no. Just ye work to was go doing to GS what yatcha. Ye work to the tonic city. A hun yakati yaka. Has doing canic one wasa yakacha.
I'm going to try as short as I can be with respect to what my grandfather just said. He wanted to say, to let you know he was expressing his appreciation to the words that I spoke as an eagle, and it's the way we are as a people. He talked about the elders and those that have gone before us, that know the language, know the ways, know the purpose for which they were created and made. And not only did he say that, he referred to the way in which we should really look at those particular ways, because even as someone mentioned here, 10,000 years, that is a long time. That has to say something of value about our language, because without language, there's no way in which we would have been able to communicate. And so it is important. I want to thank this young man here for standing up here and doing what you're doing and allowing us to do what you're doing. That is real language. And I know that it may have a little bit of an impact on your agenda, but what you're doing is really speaking the language of acceptance. And I thank the Athabascan people for allowing us to do what you're doing on your land. Thank you very much. And before we go any further, we're going to sing a song, and Ruth is going to give some information on that.
I just wanted to say also that, Byron, you spoke to us, and it was from as if you were speaking the English language of our ancestors. That's how I felt you were speaking, in the way, in the love that you cherished from your mother, and learning and seeing how your mother behaved and how you lived a different life, and that was a different life, and that you walked in the pathway of our ancestors, and you've allowed us to follow, and you gave us points of suggestions of what we must do and how we must carry ourselves, is what I was saying when I was speaking Tlingit. And I was just going to say thank you.
Oh, geez. Con.
Lieutenant Governor, you spoke to us from your heart. This song comes from Cake that we're going to share with you. There is a man in Cake whose name is Ankina, who is of the Wasinadi Eagle clan. And he was sitting in his home, which belonged to his grandmother. And as a young man, he would go into his grandmother's room. She was bedridden. And she would sing a song for him. And being a dance leader for our Khan and Cake, when he remembered this song, he asked his wife for a recorder. Bring me a recorder. I remember the song my grandmother used to sing. And you know, these things come back to us. Our language comes back to us. Our songs live on. And the song came back to him, and he sang it. He could hear his grandmother's voice in his mind. And he always had to dance to this song. He would go into the bedroom, and she would sing for him so he could dance. And after he had danced, he was rewarded with a can of mandarins. So this became our Mandarin song. And this goes to show you that our culture lives on. Our songs come back to us. Our language comes back to us. And we hope, you know, the new learners out there can continue. Put your hearts into it. Gulchish, gulchish. And now we'll do the Mandarin song. And Byron.
The Lieutenant Governor's going to dance for you.
Gunilchish, Khatsu, Akhtawaskuin Kakoni, Gitsuya, Lieutenant Governor to Akhkani, Khatsu Tude Khatkasi Khat, Yaka. I'm too also related to our Lieutenant Governor, your grandmother, Shakuin, Laura George Yoksha, was my father's mother and my auntie Nora, and also Ne Nakilsan, were all related to Byron. His grandmother was my grandmother's true auntie, and she remembers your grandmother as you were a little boy. And so that's why I say I'm too related, tied to our lieutenant governor. Atlakwasaya hatuik to ikach hatuuk ikach. And the way Ruth was talking, the language and the songs come back. Ituyeti hayuk atangi cheyesu. Yewach tuyeti adei yuk ayatangi. Yeah, this is the way I feel that Kanak is also speaking to you. It's still in you, and it'll come back. And just like these songs, you meditate and talk on it. All the words that your mother, the love of your mother talked and your aunties talked about, you'll start to remember some of them. So we are very proud of our Lieutenant Governor, our relative, my uncle, and also my in-law now.
So it looks like Luke has his drum out too, so I guess we're going to sing another song. And I want to apologize to the presenters and everyone for this next session because this one's going a little long, but I think you all understand.
The lieutenant governor was in Minto one time when he was running for election. There was a big potlatch going on, and he came into the hall, and we were so happy to see him. I don't know if he made his campaign speech that time, but we were having native dance, Indian dance. And the thing in Minto is that when we support somebody, we all the men gather around him, and all the young men were standing next to him, and he was dancing with us, and he was really having a good time. And all the young men just ran up to him, and they throw him up, you know. Poor guy. And when they were throwing him up, they add this part to the story. I don't know if it's true or not, but you know how us natives are. We add something on to the story and make it bigger. Well, when they were throwing him up, no change came out of his pocket. No money came out, so they just left him. So, welcome. We support you, what you do, native song, and all our people here are just singing one native song for you on your journey. And this is my grandson. He's learning how to dance, so he's going to help me dance. Anybody can join us up here, sing and dance, and anybody's welcome. We're not putting on show, we're doing this for honor. we want to, since everybody is singing, we want to sing from the Gwich'in country too. And, and we would like to sing for you. Maybe you could sit in front of us and, you know, we don't want to forget you from Gwich'in country, Gwich'in nation. So we have a we have a song that we brought back from our my wife great grandmother and Yvonne great grandmother. It's a war song, but we were using it for alcohol and drugs, fighting against that, and language is one of them for our culture, our values, and with that, this song, there's a lot of people help us to put it back together. Trumbull is one of them too, to help, and all the ancestors that went before us.
I was just kidding. Jet Inya.
I had to grab the drum so he can't say no. I know there is time, but I don't want us to feel like this has all been Athabascan Tlingets gathering here. We also have our Inupiaq and Yupik delegations and people represented here. So we want to share our Eskimo dance as well. I have this catch in my throat because I really appreciate we all, I think, those of us here have all been able to get in and have engaged with that power. Because we are all in positions, I think, those of us here that are also in the institutions that have both caused our struggle but caused our healing, and you know, we're working through it. So we have all had that struggle, probably not to the degree that you're facing, of doing what we can and having that positive impact, but also feeling like it's not even close to what we wish we could do, you know. And so I want to thank you for that. And I want to make sure that we balance. Balance our singing and drumming a little bit. So everybody, Nikki Pilusi, you're welcome. Please stand where you are. You can come up as you want to. This is going to be a common dance. Any, dance how you're called to dance. There are no set motions. But we just want to make sure we express our thanks and appreciation as well.
Yeah, we got to figure out how we're going to do this next one. So
We'll just shorten it an hour. Yeah, I think we want to chat.
Okay. All right, so the Hawaiians reminded me that, hey, Hawaiians are here too.
Oh, pā nui ko mako na au I ka holohe ana, ka nana ana, ia o kou, ma ke kupa a maluna o ke hoola olelo ana, o ka o kou mau olelo. No laila ale hiki ke noho I lalo pona I kui luna. We've been doing this for a generation and a half. We felt everything that was expressed this morning. I've had several tears this morning. It's so important. And it's so important the gathering together to recognize what has happened and to talk about and commit to your next steps. And the energy that you're all putting in it, in that commitment and in that intention. And so we're going to do a chant. And this chant actually was written by Larry. Yeah, wow. And I'm going to let Larry talk a little bit about it. He doesn't know it, but I'm going to, because I think you should hear it from the composer. But it's one we use in education to help rally our spirits and to kind of help us in the confirmation of our commitment to our language for our grandchildren ahead. We have to do all the work today because we need to make sure that all our intention and those promises and commitments will touch their lives one day.
Hi, mahalo. So, in our session about Mele yesterday, I introduced this song. So some of you heard this story, but the inspiration came from one of the camps. I don't know if you heard at our panel yesterday that Pila was talking about, and sitting after we went out fishing with our fisherman elder. came. This is at night. By the time we got home, it was almost 2:30 in the morning. So we're sitting outside in the yard and looking up at the sky. It was a beautiful sky. It happened to be a full moon. But the moon was going down to set at its horizon. And he said to me, "Oh, do you see the vena?" And we're speaking in Hawaiian, so ka vena o ke ao. And that is like this beam that's coming up from the dawn. And I looked up and I couldn't see the vena o ke ao. But he was explaining to me that as the hoku is the full moon that was going down to set, when that moon hoku sets, hoku plemo is the name we give in Hawaiian. That's when the sun will be rising at the same time. So when I was asked to compose this song about education for an education conference we had, I believe it was 1996 or so, that experience came to mind. That as we see the setting of the moon at the horizon at the same time with Hoku Palemo, the sun is coming up for a new day. And this new day is bringing with it the inspiration, the traditional knowledge, our whole identity as to who we are for a renewed day for all of us. So this is how we liken our education efforts today in our own language, of course. No Leila is called Wow Hawaii. Hawaii has dawned.
Kau ke kahe awana au I ka ala papa La ia ni luna o ke kukulu o ka lanila O ka ui e huli alo nei ka ulu e ai Wow Ho mai la ko malama lama I ka honua nei ka mauliola Ua o Hawaii I ke oli no nei Mai ka piina ka vela na kala Ka hiko ia I ka ike mano mano Ka ike koli umai o kikilo mai O ka uno ia o ka pulama Apa ama ka ipu o ka ike ai Ua Mahalo.
Just to add, your lieutenant governor represents something for us too because he's often come to Hawaii and brought us the log for our hokulea canoe. So mahalo.
So it worked out. Okay.
I know that this is so inspirational. But this is a quick story about language and the importance of language, and I'm going to shorten it up. Some of you here may know James Nagiak from Utqiagvik and Kaktovik and Anaktuvik Pass. He taught here at the university for a while. While he was teaching here, Reverend Walter Soboleff came to town. Many of you know Reverend Walter Soboleff, an icon, an incredible leader. James also is a Presbyterian minister, and he asked Walter if he would give the sermon to his congregation while Walter was here in Fairbanks. And I'm shortening up a really good story. And Walter said, of course. And so the time came for the sermon. James, who is my high school classmate and schoolmate, said to Walter, I'm going to translate everything you say into Inupiaq for my congregation, some of whom are elders, and Inupiaq's our first language. And also, Walter, every word you say is so important that I want to translate as precisely as I'm able. So Walter, this is a true story. Walter was giving his sermon, and after a while, the entire congregation burst out laughing. And Walter said, stopped and said, did I say something wrong? Did I offend you? I'm so sorry. And James looked at him, stopped laughing, and said, Reverend, I told you I wanted to translate every word you said because it's so important and inspiring as right as I possibly can. And you were speaking to us about the importance of family, and you were illustrating a family gathering. And you even were describing the food that the family was eating, and you said it was a Sunday afternoon after church, and they were eating, among other foods, hot dogs. And he said, Walter, the only way I can translate hot dogs into Inupiaq is dogs in heat. So that's precise translation. And James then said, Walter never finished his sermon.
So that reminds me of this story. So we're, luckily, the Hawaiians are the two that they've been presenting now for about an hour. And so, huh? Okay, Yupiks have a song. We have the drum up here if you need it, or are you just gonna sing from there? Oh, they want me to come there.
Mikil ngutwani apritnik huanguta bisak tukut. So as little children that speak in Yuhtun, they like to say, hey, kapi. So that's what we're doing. So this is one of the church songs we sing, but it is a thank you for our food. But as my mother likes to say, well, she used to say that words of wisdom are our food. So in memory of the words of wisdom that we heard throughout the week and the food that we are about to eat, we'd like to sing a prayer song. Yuhtun. We'll sing one verse.
So I don't think we have time to make it over to a breakout and meet for 5 minutes and then walk back to eat at noon. So I think we're gonna just have to not have the 2 breakouts that we had at noon, and I'll talk with the Native Hawaiians to see if we just add a breakout later on in the agenda to replace the breakouts that they were gonna host. But I do just want to close out, because I know we've been here all morning without a break, to thank once again the panelists that were up here opening us up with the conversation. Thank Governor Byron Malott and our other guest, Liz Medicine Crow, for joining us this morning. It just really, it was wonderful to have you here with us this morning for this piece. And then I also just want to thank all the groups for all the sharing and the songs, and for everybody for having the flexibility to be able to shift the way we needed to shift this morning so we can create the space for what did happen, because I think it was really important. So I want to thank you all for having that flexibility as well with us this morning. So with that, I would like to... So with that, I would like to say, let's go ahead and take a break up until lunch so people can take a walk, decompress a little bit, and then lunch should be ready here. It looks like it's already ready, so maybe if some people want to start eating early, they can. We had the blessing from our UBAC delegation, so thank you also. Break, and then we'll have lunch.